Hello, everyone. Welcome to Breathwork's podcast. I have another beautiful lady here joining us today, dear Bridget. Hi, Bridget. Welcome.
Hi, Nevşah. Hello, everyone. Very happy to be here this morning.
Welcome. Yeah, very nice to have you here. So let's start with you and what you're doing. You're a wellness coach. You're also teaching breathing. Let's first start with your journey and how how you
Okay.
came up with wherever you are.
How far back do you want to start?
I think when you decided to help people, because that's
Okay.
kind
All
of
right.
like it was my experience, and I know many of the
Yes.
teachers' experience, kind of like a calling. It
Yes.
doesn't happen to everyone, but when that calling is there to help people, to help humankind, it just evolves naturally. So let's
Yeah.
start there. Like, when was that
Okay.
calling, and what happened later on?
Okay. So maybe a little bit of backstory is that I was living in Beijing for 12 years and I had my own company there. So I was in the language industry and I ran a company there for 12 years. And then when I approached 50, I wanted to change because I worked so much with documents that I decided I wanted to work with people. And I was fed up with working documents. I was always with my computer. So that was the beginning of realizing I wanted to move more into training. I had been doing some training in Beijing to do with LinkedIn and English and things like that. So I went off traveling, and my last child had left home, and I went traveling to find my change, what I wanted to do next, to find my pivot. And I had an online business, so I could work and travel. And I did that for 3 years. And then I met someone, I was in Asia, who had been on this yoga retreat on Koh Phangan, this island in Thailand. And I thought, I fancy doing that for a month. So I went to this yoga retreat. I had done yoga for many years in Beijing because Beijing is a very full-on, big, noisy, stressful city with about 20 million inhabitants. And I cycled everywhere and I ran a business and I raised 3 kids. So there's a lot of stress. So I used to do yoga just to help me, eliminate the stress and manage. So on this yoga retreat, I loved it and I decided to train as a teacher. And when I got to the end of my teacher training, which was a few months later, I realized I still didn't know anything about breath. And breath is a huge component of yoga. So I put myself on my own breath training course. The first thing I did was go and train as a free diver, excuse me, because I thought, what's the biggest challenge you can give your mental state and your lungs? And I thought free diving. So I was already a diver. So I went and trained as a free diver, absolutely loved it, had a fantastic Russian instructor who really put us through our paces. And little by little, I started to learn about the breath. And I did courses online and I worked with a physio from New Zealand. And I discovered.
I'm gonna just ask
Go
one
on.
thing. When
Yeah,
was the time you connected, like really connected with the power of breath and understood what breath
I
is?
think the free diving,
Free diving, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that
Like,
was
you're
about
face to face with, you either breathe or
exactly.
manage your breath, or
Yes,
it becomes dangerous.
exactly. And I remember when I arrived, I asked the instructor, oh, what's the most important thing to be a good free diver? And I thought he would say, oh, someone who has big lungs and who's fit. And he said, focus and flexibility. So focus the mental part, because free diving, you need to really have good, control of your mental capacity. You need to be able to make yourself calm, etc. And flexibility, what he meant was the flexibility to have your rib cage, to be able to open your rib cage, etc. So yeah, so I did that. I did lots of training, and through that training, I discovered that all the neck problems I'd had for years and years and years were due to dysfunctional breathing. So I was a chest breather because I always had tight tummy muscles because I'm a fighter. I was ready. And that was my aha moment. And I went, boom, that's what I want to do. I want to make sure everyone else understands about breathing. So I was already moving away from the language industry. And then I said, right, I'm going into training. I want to go into stress management. And I did that in London for a year. And then lockdown happened. And so I came to Norfolk. My mum's from Norfolk, and I owned a property here. And my tenants gave it back. And I was doing it up thinking, oh, I'd get more tenants. And then I went, wow, it's by the sea. It's beautiful in Norfolk. What could I do with it? And I said, maybe a tiny little retreat center. So I have 2 guest rooms. I have a yoga room downstairs, lovely garden, and I run these very small scale retreats where I do work with a lot of corporate people. So a lot of people who are close to burnout, maybe on sick leave from work because of a lot of stress, or they come because some major thing has happened in their life to make them stressed, like death, bereavement, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's what I do now. So I work on a very small scale, but I love it because I can really get sort of intimate with the person. I mean, I can really help them and personalize what I do with them, and then what they take away, the practices that they do.
My team is right now asking, how do you use breathwork for stress management? And my question after that will be, what do you suggest people to not to burn out? I mean, it's great to come to a retreat, and they can come to a retreat whenever. And, then they don't have to be sick to come to a retreat. Like, people don't have to get sick, or people don't have to get to a level of burnout. I think there is, how I see it is, the question is, how can we help people to become aware of their daily habits, or how they live their lives every day, so that they don't, end up in a burnout syndrome? I think that's kind of like, that's a big deal.
Yes, I think there's one thing we need to remember about burnout, and it is, and especially in the corporate setting. So not if you have your own business, if you're working for a company, is that generally it's not the person's fault. I mean, burnout comes because they have too much workload, because they don't feel valued, because they have no control over their time and their workload. And that totally plays out in the people who come and stay with me. I mean, they've either been bullied out of their position, or people have left because of a management change and they've taken on other people's work. So number one, because there's a big issue of shame, etc., and people blaming themselves about burnout, but it's generally due to a whole lot of external factors. So that's one point I want to make. I agree, obviously, people who come to me after or during the fact, then they're very lucky, I think. And I always say to them when they come, well done for coming now, because it's going to give you the energy and the clarity, etc., to deal with everything else that's going to follow. So maybe that's negotiating a way out of your company, or taking a different role in your company, and all that is very complex and creates a lot of stress.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, like, what can the companies do around that? Like, how can the companies support their employees, because they are also losing money and losing time? The researchers say companies around the world, big enterprises especially, pay billions of dollars every year for employee health. So it's like, maybe we should, as companies, because I'm also a CEO and founder, first of all, ask ourselves, what are we doing or what are we not doing? So that we get those results, because it's like, that's kind of like 50-50. We are all responsible. What do you suggest to all the enterprises and the corporates? What would you like them to
I think a lot of it comes from leadership. I think it just strikes me every time I have somebody and they unwrap their story, that there hasn't been very much leadership, and a lot of it's left to HR. And I feel sorry for HR, because I think they get a lot of flack. So HR are left with this person who's falling apart and they don't know what to do. So I think a lot of it comes from leadership. And if the leaders care, and if the leaders take time out, and if the leaders look after themselves, etc., then I think that's a model that can trickle down. So I think a lot of it is that, and also leaders and CEOs being aware of what's happening in their company, and not just relying on the lower level managers. I mean, everybody's under stress and pressure, aren't they? But if we can find a way to work together, I think that would be very helpful. Obviously, a lot of, I think, training and working with people together, like some of the work that Breath Hub does, and going into companies and giving them a space to share things and to talk about the stress, etc. I mean, the problem is, it's very hard to say I'm stressed and I can't cope, isn't it? What do you do? It's the human instinct to be competitive and to survive. So you don't go and tell your manager you can't cope. You just think, oh, well, I'll just get stuck in more. And that's how it starts to go wrong, I think. So
what I hear,
better communication in companies.
Yeah, so what I hear is, it's like, maybe that's kind of like an invitation for all the companies and enterprises, understanding that, first, the world we live in is tough. It's like there's a lot of competition in the corporate area, and also on the human level as well in the corporates. And also, everything happening, life is fast, a lot of things happening at the same time, a lot of emotions going on, thoughts, thinking patterns are fast, everything is fast in the fast track. So maybe understanding that in today's environment, the first thing that happens to people, busy people, is, stress. It's like that's part of our lives now. And, even before people tell us, the employees tell us, I can't cope anymore, or, I have the burnout syndrome, or, whatever's happening, I'm tired, or I have chronic fatigue, or whatever. Maybe understanding that stress is part of our lives now, and adding, some little substance like Breath Hub, supporting our employees to use it every day, because that was why we developed Breath Hub, especially on the corporate level, so that people can use it daily for 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
I think before things happen, understanding that they will eventually of course, leadership is very important. This is important, that's important, but eventually it happens due to many reasons. And eventually we get stressed due to the life we're living in. Like finding tools to support our team and giving them those tools even before anything happens to keep them, safe and healthy and well. I think that would be the best thing. Do you think, that would be one of the formulas? And do you think Breath Up can help around that?
Yeah. Well, I think there's two issues here. So I think one is that there's going to be a lot of stress in a company. I mean, business is competitive, etc. So that's a given. And we need to learn how to manage that. And I think what we can do as breath workers is teach people how to not let that stress affect their health. We cannot take the stress away, you and I, Nevşah. I mean, that's up to the companies to create a culture or an environment where, yes, there can be competitive stress, etc. There can be a certain amount of stress to, meet deadlines and work on big projects. But it's up to the companies to create the culture and the environment where, where people are not overworked and underpaid and undervalued, and it becomes meaningless. Burnout is a lot about people disengaging, because they're just like, it's too much. So I think that's what we have to look at. And it's not fair either if companies say, well, okay, I'm giving you this wellness program because you need to, now it's up to you to keep your good health. I don't think that's correct either. So I do think there has to be communication, and everybody needs to play their role. So we can teach people, I can teach people how to not let stress be so destructive, be so damaging. I can teach some tools, and you could teach me way more, Nevşah. But I still think there is a role from the leadership, etc., and to create the working environment. I mean, when you talk to people that work in really healthy teams, or when you look at Google did a lot of research about this, it's brilliant. I mean, they just all support each other, and if someone is down, other people will come and help, and you can be stressed, and that's fine. But I think there's a lot of toxic culture, and unfortunately I get a lot of the people who have been spat out of the system, and without support, and people that have worked, sometimes 20 years in companies, and they're just pushed out with a package sometimes, but it's like they're disposable, and I just think that's a very ugly way to work, and
ugly truth of the corporate, especially I think enterprise environment, where there are a lot of people. And I can see it in both sides, from both sides of the story, because I have a lot of students I've been supporting who have been employees and who have been working in professional, enterprises, companies. And I'm also a company owner myself, a CEO myself. So I'm on both sides. So I see both sides of the story. Yes. So I can understand why they act that way and why there is no time left, because you have too many responsibilities. But then again, I think creating a system where each and every individual feels supported and valued, that's also one of the responsibilities of all the managers and the CEOs and the executive team, and understanding that we are working with humans,
Exactly.
They are not
We have
robots, or
feelings.
they are not machines. There's this
Yes.
human side which needs that nurturing energy. And how I look at it is, because I'm also connected with a lot of female platforms in the corporate business, like supporting each other. I think the old way, the masculine way, too masculine way, like goals and setting goals and working like hell and go-getters, that doesn't work anymore, because that made a lot of people sick and, burnout and all that. I think we have to, we need different ways, more feminine ways in the work environment, like more nurturing ways, and so that people can go to work or go to the office and not feel like they go to the office, but more like a family. Because what you said is, it's like people supporting each other. It's kind of like more family environment, more kind of like this mothering energy the core company gives. So we need that. We need more, feminine energy and more female leadership and more nurturing and understanding all the nurturing methods. So we should not only, like you said, give people ways to nurture themselves, but also find ways and create symptoms to help them feel nurtured.
I think that nurturing is key, because I've had about 50 or 60 people now come and stay on retreats with me, and one of the things that I've understood is that it's the whole experience that counts, because when they walk through my front door, it's like they let go of their stress, their pets, their children, their house, and then they come into my home like they're my friend, really, like they're my guests, and then everything is included, the food and all that. And a lot of them have said, I just feel so nurtured, and especially the women, who are often the nurturers in their own little family or their own team at work. So I think feeling that someone is caring for you and looking out for you and sharing the responsibility with you is something that companies could do better.
Exactly.
Because that is so often what happens is people come to me with terrible insomnia and all the really chronic issues of stress, and then they sleep because we've done yoga, we've done breath work, I've sent them down to the beach, they've had lovely food, they feel safe, and then boom, they sleep for the first time, sometimes in months. And I just think that is a truly wonderful thing of the body, because the body is then feeling safe and it can finally relax, So I think a lot of the issues one of the ways that breath can help manage stress is that, as you know, and I know you're way more qualified than me, Nevşah, is that, we can use breath to bring our body back to calm. And that's the key thing, I think. If you're in a stressful meeting, or you've had a bad email, or you're being shouted at, obviously your body's going to go into survival mode, and your breathing pattern is going to change, obviously, and that's how we're designed, and that's fine. We should thank our stress response for looking after us. But what we can do is teach people how to come back to a place of calm, how to find some space, how to reflect, how to go out of survival mode into a more, what I call that the green space, as opposed to the red, and help them then perhaps have some communication in a more calm way. So I think those are the things that I teach people, is how to get all those little times in the day where you can bring your body back to calm. Because as you know, Nevşah, many people live with chronic levels of stress. I mean, they never have the chance to release it, which is what they do, I think, when they come to me. So, teaching people these little micro breath moments in the day and how to release tension is what we can do by going into and then, yes, you are responsible for yourself. I always say to people, don't let a company ruin your health. Why would you want to do that? It's money is not as important. I know it's easy for me to say that. I've had my own business a long time, so I'm out of the corporate world. But I don't think our health is worth it, because statistics show that no one really ever recovers fully from burnout. There's always some kind of consequences, and many people never recover. Their brains never recover. Imagine that. It's like having a car. It's like having a motorbike accident and injuring your head. There's so much.
And that's, I think it's also important on the personal level for each of us to understand that, this is what you got, and take good care of it. It's like, this is what you got. That's it. It's like, your body, your brain, your whole
Yeah.
system. This is what you got. That's
Yeah.
our first and the most important responsibility, because that will affect any area of life, relationships,
Yeah.
you know, with your family, everything. Yeah, that's true. And with the nurturing, that's why I try to, you know, lead people into understanding breathing, their breathing, you know, help them to deeply connect with their breath, because I think our breath is the most important tool that nurtures us physically,
Yeah.
emotionally, and mentally. And with my students, I've been doing retreats like you did for, you know, for over 20 years now. And how I look at it is, it's great that, you know, people come to retreats, and, you know, I think there's a great, amazing transformation happening, and they feel nurtured, and it's kind of like reset when people go to a retreat.
Definitely.
It's kind of like boom, reset, and then you're full on again.
Yeah.
And I still want to teach people some more awareness, so
Yeah.
that they can still come to my retreats, our retreats, but not that low. It's like, because you can nurture yourself, keep on nurturing yourself through breathing, like every day, just taking 5 minutes. It's just 5 minutes of your day to just, you know, connect with your breath. And because I think our responsibility as breath workers and breathing teachers is to teach people the importance of breath, first of all. Like,
Yeah.
you know, all of our organs live and stay healthy with breath. All of our tissues renew themselves with breath. Like, you stay healthy and well if you have a healthy breathing. But, you know, when you don't pay attention to your breath, when you keep on changing your breathing due to stress, and there will be stress. So like understanding, like with stress, and there will be stress, you know, your breathing habit changes, and then your body physically doesn't get nurtured, and you don't get nurtured emotionally and mentally.
Yeah.
And then you're drained. But if you took just 5 minutes every day, just 5 minutes, I mean, 5 to 10 if you like, but it's like 5 minutes to close your eyes, do an active breathing exercise to, you know, receive more oxygen and receive more breath and receive more life, receive more spirit, you would spiritually and mentally and emotionally and physically be so much nurtured that day. Like, you wouldn't need to, you know, get to a level where you burn out. And that's I think, no matter what happens in our lives, of course, like we talked about, the, you know, the executives also have responsibilities. I fully agree. And still, on the personal level, we need to take care of ourselves. Like, we need to get that 5 minutes of the day and start thinking like, this is me, this is all I got, so I need to take care of it myself. And this is the fastest way. Like, breath work is the fastest way, you know, just 5 minutes every day, and you're full on.
I think it makes you a lot more grounded about yourself. You know, the more you can do some breathing exercises in the day. I mean, maybe you do one at your desk, maybe you do one while you're boiling the kettle, maybe you do one when you wake up in the morning or whatever. But I think when you're more grounded like that, and you're more connected to yourself, you're more clear thinking. So when stress does arrive, you can be more objective about it. Like, okay, well, this is going to be really hard work for a week or 2 weeks, so I need to plan times where I can release stress, tension, like going for a walk, doing some yoga, having a swim, a run, or whatever, playing with your kids, and ways where I can breathe to keep this nice, you know, sort of conscious breathing going. And that's the beauty of doing the breathing every day, is that you're equipped then to deal with the stress, and you can come back to a place of calm and be more objective. But when we don't do that, I think that's when we get into the chronic low levels of stress, and that's very dangerous, because even low levels can really start to affect your body, you know, and then you've got a whole cascade of things happening. So yeah, I mean, the first thing I always do is ask people how they breathe, why they breathe, where they breathe, and then I just get them, the biology of it, the biomechanics of it, and they're all like, no one's ever taught me that. I didn't understand the diaphragm did that, or the ribs need to move, and I think that's a little bit of knowledge as well, and they can feel it in their body, is how I get people to get a little bit of skin in the game. And then they're like, oh, okay, well, she's breathing 25 breaths a minute and I'm only breathing 8. And then they're like, whoa, well, why is she different to me? And then that you know, is a good basis, I think. We all start, don't we? We're all born breathing perfectly. So what happens, you know, what happens is life happens, and bad habits we get stuck with them because of illness, because of many things, you know. So yeah, A little bit of
Yeah.
breathing every day goes a
Yeah.
long way.
Yeah, and what you're actually saying is, I think, a great emphasis on the awareness of breath, like being aware of your breath. I think that's the key
Yeah,
to health.
absolutely.
Because it's kind of like, I mean, if there would be one formula I could teach to people, especially, you know, anyone listening to us right now or watching from YouTube channel, I would tell them, like, just be aware of how you're breathing when you're relaxed and by yourself, like when you're fully balanced. Maybe like today, you know, it's weekend, you woke up and you're fully feeling fulfilled and okay and well rested and balanced. Just check, you know, how you're breathing, and just become aware of how you're breathing at those, you know, times when you're balanced. And then whenever you freak out or become anxious or stressed, check your breathing that moment, and you will see that there's a huge difference.
Yeah.
And that awareness, it's like just understand that how, I think understanding how we breathe is affecting our chemistry, our physiology, our overall body fluid chemistry, which does affect, if you are too alkaline or too acidic, how we feel, how we think. And people are trying to change negative thoughts, but it's like, the reason why you have negative thoughts is because your chemistry isn't balanced. It's that simple. It's like the brain, when it doesn't have the perfect pH levels, 7.4, starts thinking in all kinds of weird ways. And then you start feeling weird, and this happened and that happens. And that's all, you know, the reason is you're changing your breathing, and the reason your chemistry is changing. So if you want to govern your emotions and govern your thoughts, it is so important to become aware of your breath and start governing your breath. Like, how are you breathing now? And how were you breathing 5 minutes ago? Like when you, for example, got angry and shouted at your child, you know, how were you breathing at that specific moment? If you can get that, like, be aware and, you know, this is why. Because that's sitting in the core. It's like, that would be, I think that's kind of like my main message to the world. Someone who has done, you know, research on breathing and breathing habits for over 20 years now. That's the basic. It's like, how we're breathing is affecting how we're thinking, how we're feeling, and how we are behaving. So if you want to change your behaviors, if you want, you know, to behave different and feel different and think different and govern yourself, and also govern your wellness and health, of course, start, you know, practicing breath work, just to be aware of your breathing. And during the day, try to be aware. I think that's a great formula we could give to people.
Yeah, I think the way I explain practice is that if you think about the fire brigade, they practice every day for fire. I mean, they practice jumping in their clothes quickly, getting their fire engine out and all that. Whether there's a fire or not, they practice. And I think we should think about breathing technique practices in that way. We need to practice every day for a fire, so that when the day the fire comes, we are able, I mean, we are going to have adrenaline, cortisol, we are going to have, you know, a huge amount of chemicals in our body, and that's fine. We have to accept that. But it does mean that if we've done all that practice and we know how to come back to the core or the calm, then we can do it. I mean, obviously we can't do it straight away, but if we can just step out, find a bit of space, we can bring ourselves back. It's very easy to do if you've been doing that for years, or if you've been doing that every morning for 5 minutes. And I think that's the message that I want to give people, is that is why we practice. We practice for the emergency. There may never be one, but that doesn't matter. You know, we just keep doing it. We keep connecting with ourselves every day, and it gives us the clarity we need, you know, to navigate the day. So I think that's the beauty of practice. Is it's comforting, but it's really very rewarding, and you get the payback, you know.
Yeah, and breath work is the most powerful practice because it affects our physiology immediately.
Yeah,
it's like, I don't think we could get the results we get with daily breath work practice with any other practice. That's like, you know, very very powerful. Thank you very much, Bridget, for being with us today.
It was a pleasure.
How was the weather over there?
It's very grey, but I'm still going to go down to the beach because, you know, I need to have my nature time. And it's
lovely.
Saturday, so
I miss the beach.
Well, come and stay.
Yeah. Yeah, I might one day.
Oh, that'd be
Thank you
great.
very much. And
You're
thank you
welcome.
to all of our listeners and anybody who's over there watching us in our YouTube
Yeah,
channel.
thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Namaste.
Take care.
Take
Namaste.
care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.